Hey everyone, how's it going? Cell here. So, Sanctum League just dropped a couple days ago. Today's Sunday. Came out on Friday, and with it, Ruthless came out as well. So, I've been playing plenty of that and have been enjoying it. I've been playing Ruthless Sanctum Trade League. I'm normally an SSF player, but I figured just, logically piecing it out, the difficulty scale right now is probably easiest to hardest. Normal mode, trade, normal SSF, trade league, ruthless, and SSF, ruthless being the hardest, of course. So yeah, decided to turn up the difficulty a little bit. I'm playing Fire Dot Jug right now, so that's the same thing I would have played in Solo Selfhound, so I figured that should translate well to still being a difficulty bump and allowing me to get used to Ruthless, and I probably will end up playing Ruthless Solo Selfhound at some point, and possibly even making that my more permanent place to be as well. I don't know, I've been enjoying Ruthless a lot. When they initially talked about it, I had no interest, but then as they came out with the actual rule set and we're talking about that a couple months ago, I became more interested, and yeah, so far in playing it, it just is my type of game. Like, the whole movement skill thing, movement skills are removed for the most part. There are still a few you can get through items and such, but just not feeling, just generally slowing the game down, I would say, is right at my alley, even if I'm not really playing a ton. Just because of the fact that, it's easier on the hands, easier on eye strain and things like that. Not having to worry about going as fast as possible because the game allows you to. I mean, you can still do that, of course. The upper limit in Ruthless is still very much the same as in normal mode, but it takes a lot longer to get to that point. And brings me to another point, which is the game is all about progression, right? So elongating that progression so that you're not getting as fast, or getting to the point of trivialization as quickly, I should say, is something that resonates with me. Also, the clip might be a little laggy here. My recording setup was not ideal for this, so apologies for that. But yeah, anyways, those are my general thoughts on Ruthless. Like I said, I've been playing Trade League, so interacting with Trade a little bit, but if you notice my skills right now, I am using an unlinked Righteous Fire, and I have a 3-link, which has my Flame Wall, my Fire Trap, and burning damage support in it. So, not exactly doing stellar on the damage front, which is kind of surprising because the game still feels fine to me. It takes a minute to get used to, and I definitely had like a 10-minute Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 boss fights and such, but getting used to it. And then I had a really rough start because there are no damage nodes at the start of Marauder for this build, so it took me a minute to get to the damage nodes and such up near Templar and that area. So once I got to that point, it was picking up a little bit more and started feeling significantly better from there. I went in, and the reason I went with this build over, say, Cold Dot, I think Cold Dot would have been better, but on the damage front, that is, but less tanky. And I specifically wanted to play a tankier build because I figured if everything, like, you're not going to be able to go glass cannon if you're having trouble getting links, supports, etc., and just itemization issues in general. And so, if you can't go glass cannon, to me that makes it a war of attrition, and you're just trying to see who dies first, you or the boss. And especially for act bosses, I saw a lot of people like, oh, I'm stuck at the Brine King. Can somebody come help me? And there aren't any hard DPS checks, of course, but if you die, you recover the boss's life. It's 20 or 25%. I'm not exactly sure. So basically people were dying to bosses and whatnot, and they couldn't progress past that because they were dying too frequently. And I was like, okay, I made a pretty decent choice as I was approaching that point to go the tankier build and essentially make it so that I can survive the boss fights even if it does take a little while. And just dying in general, even though I play softcore, is pretty annoying, and it can be a setback, especially with the increased XP penalty of Ruthless for level 68 and beyond, which, now that I'm in maps, I obviously am. So anyways, let's get into the live game and talk about the character a little more. Alright, so here we are. First of all, gear. Most of what I'm wearing, I did find myself. Well, okay, that's kind of not true. Up until about level 68, most of what I was wearing, I found myself. Let's see, what am I looking for? This one. I used this weapon from Act 3 at some point. Item level 30, found it myself. I used this from Act 3 until level 68, when I decided it was time to invest in something a little better. Largely because I noticed that the price of +1 spell weapons was pretty low. So I got this for an Alk, which it basically has one stat on it, which is fine. The plus on fire and the 40% LE damage. I just wanted to not have to socket my gems into this so that I could open up possibilities for other gearing. Not to mention, if I'm going to be getting essentially one stat from it anyways, splitting this into 2 items was going to be better for me. So I bought this scepter, needed level 68, got up to 68 before running Merciless Lab, and equipped this, and then I also bought this shield for an Alk as well. Yeah, the shield also pretty decent. Solid life, good resist, has a resist that I needed some of at the time. I am massively overcapped right now. Again, I'm in maps, so this is after all of the resistance penalties. And that's including an Immortal Flesh, which I should say, I believe I traded this for a Wheel of the Storm sale. If you're not familiar, it gives some rarity and some lightning res. It's a level 5 unique shield. I got that from Brutus when I was muling Clarity on a Shadow. So I got that pretty early, but yeah, I think this was massively undervalued in my opinion. Probably because people think the downside of the negative resistances is higher than it is. Personally, I mean, obviously it's not that big of a deal for me, but for some builds it would be. Apart from that, just equipped this as well. I think I sold my last one, but it was just another armor base with like 19 lightning res on it. These rings, found pretty early as well. Again, they have like nothing on them. Gloves, again, super early, item level 30. These boots, I saw someone post them in trade chat for an Alk, and at the time, I was in X7, and I had no movement speed boots up until that point. So putting these on felt amazing. Going from 0, well, I guess I was actually at 14 movement speed from my ascendancy to plus 30 is pretty great. I found this amulet at some point as well, Act 6 or 7, so that's pretty good. Decent amount of rarity. Some resists are the big thing there, and dexterity as well. I'm pretty much always going to need a dexterity amulet. Ideally a dex int amulet. I'm a little light on int, especially if I'm going to be using flame wall, which I probably will be. Apart from that, talk a little bit more about the progression. So I went life regen instead of life because I was hoping to go Righteous Fire a bit earlier than I did. And then I realized, as I was, in the first few levels, I'm like, my damage is going to feel terrible if I do like the optimal routing from the start. So I didn't swoop down here at first. I just went up through here. I also needed stats, so I picked up these on my way over to Divine Judgment and picked that up pretty early for some damage. and then pretty much continued from there up into here. I think I just picked up like Holy Dominion and Discipline and Training before going a bit further back down this way, and then connected under through here, spec'd out of these points, and did other things with them. Ended up getting like this mastery for damage over time pretty late, and now I'm just working my way towards Breath of Flames, and probably picking up a couple of more minor things as well. Probably just, you know, like health here, this health and chaos res here, things like that. A lot of resists on the tree. I think I calculated it was like 72% all res. So a lot of potential to spec out of things there as my gear improves. I'm most likely going to spec out of these 4 points and put them into damage. Probably keep this mastery here. Ideally, I want to spec out of this mastery here as well in order to get Corrupting Blood immunity, but that might have to come a little bit later. I'm using a flask, mana flask, that gives CB and bleeding immunity, so I'll probably just stick with that for a little while. Ascendancy, like I said, I went RF a little bit later, so what I did was I picked up Unstoppable first for the effective freeze immunity and a bit of movement speed to help get through the slower part of the game. And then I picked up Untiring for the life regenerate. I was actually able to start sustaining RF before Cruel Lab, just by running down here and picking this up. But this was obviously a massive boost to that. So I have a lot of net regen at this point. And then Merc Lab picked up Unbreakable. Not going the unflinching because figured if this essentially just +1 max endurance charges. Obviously it'd be nice to have easy generation, but if I'm really hurting for Fizz damage reduction, I can start using whatever it's called, Enduring Cry, yeah, to generate charges if I need to, and then just try to keep that up or pick up some duration somewhere as well. I have had some pretty good drops. Don't mind the prices. Some of these are like massively overpriced, I realized. I got a Grand Spectrum in Cruel Lab. Whoop. Yeah, item level 55. But it's horrible. Like, who wants crit chance? They want like plus minimum charges or whatever. So, I don't know. I guess maybe if someone has multiple Grand Spectrums, because yeah, it's like plus charges per Grand Spectrum, right? So this would essentially be a minimum charge as well, but not really sure who could use the crit right now. Should probably move Unleash down a little bit, find a Shadows and Dust, but I don't feel like most people are going at a speed that Rampage is actually going to be useful. Find a handful of supports, nothing really useful for me. Luri's Lantern, again, not really all that useful. Did find a Wanderlust. If these don't sell, might drop the price a little bit, but otherwise I'll just keep them and use them for potential future characters. Then in Act 9, I ended up picking up a Purity of Fire, so very excited about that. Obviously helps the resist problem, which isn't really a problem right now, but still helps ease up gear tensions, and the max res is obviously great for defensive benefits and RF sustainability. So very excited about that, and helps use up some of the remaining mana. I did have to pick up the Vitality Mastery for that because until I start getting probably like well more into endgame, I'm not going to do anything like spec into this wheel here for more aura based stuff, because that's just a heavy investment at this point, and I would need to have the auras first, which obviously I don't. I'm not using a golem or anything. I do have one slightly leveled here, but they're really annoying to use because they're lower level, so the minion is significantly lower level than everything I'm fighting, and so it dies all the time, which is very inconvenient. That's pretty much it as far as the character goes right now. Looking to progress through some maps, pick up some more links and whatnot. Maybe transmute my flasks if I'm feeling a bit daring. No, I probably should have done that a while ago, but transmutes are hard to come by. I have 12, and that's only because I just vented a bunch of stuff from a map. I feel like sustaining wisdom scrolls might be hard, actually. I'm thinking about adjusting. I'm using NeverSync's base filter right now, which has some problems of its own. Base Ruthless filter, that is. But I'm thinking about adjusting it to include things like 10 plus quality white weapons so that I can vendor them for whetstones. So that I can vendor whetstones for wisdom scrolls. It's just kind of at that point because I probably should be picking up more blue items than I have been in order to get more transmutes and such. But yeah, it just, mapping is in a situation where right now I probably just want to transmute maps because alchemies are worth gold in every sense of the word. So, use a transmute, but then there's a pretty decent chance you only get one mod on it. So I don't have enough augments to augment it. This is almost all of the augments I found all the way through up to maps. I think I found 5 or 6. And I used a couple of them. So yeah, should be interesting to see how this plays out from here. Again, I'm normally an SSF player, but playing Trade League because Ruthless is brutal enough, and I just want to get a feel for it before I start formulating any kind of solo self-found strategies. Then last thing here, I guess, is the Ruthless Atlas tree. So a lot of these are heavily nerfed. And by a lot, I mean pretty much everything except Master Chance. It's like all of these are still 4%. And I probably will end up speccing into at least a couple of these. Beasts are pretty good. June is probably pretty good. Yeah, so things like that. But first things first, gonna end up picking up whatever map sustain things I can. And these all have downsides, by the way. This is resistance, and you have lightning, cold, and fire damage coming out of their fizz. So yeah, should be an interesting time progressing through maps. I don't know whether or not, the Uber Lab is going to be worth running. Merc Lab is actually pretty good still, based on what I got there. And yeah, I don't know, should be an interesting time. I think this wheel is probably going to be pretty big because I can go ahead and elk transmute, I should say, another map right now. And you'll see that there's no pack size and there's no rarity. It's just item quantity and map drop chance. So you might be like, oh, map drop chance is good. Kind of, because if you're multiplying pack size, that's also a multiplier to map drop chance because you're just getting more enemies which have a chance to drop maps themselves. So anyways, this video is almost 20 minutes long and I want to get it uploaded. So that's progress so far. I'll be back with more videos probably in the coming days about my progress through maps or stalling in maps or whatever else. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Peace.